morning.
Good morning.
We have a lay-led service today, and we have a guest speaker. Lindsey Phillips is with us from Four Oaks, talking about foster and adoptive care needs. So that will be in place of the sermon today. Bible study will resume on Tuesday, September 10th, as will Connections. Tuesday Connections registration is open to everyone, so if that's something you're interested in, volunteering or bringing a kid, that's open. What else? Oh, Troy Stainerson had his surgery on Friday, and it was successful. They got all the rest of the cancer off of his liver, so really good news there. So he remains at the university recovering right now. All right, anything else, Hannah? Okay, all right, I feel like I'm forgetting something.
Oh, God's work our hands. That's what.
What's that?
God's work our hands.
God's work our hands is
The 8th.
the 8th.
The 8th. And
September 8th.
yeah, and so we're going to be going to Highland Ridge and after church, and we're going to be doing a service with them, specifically the memory care side, Jan? Nursing home, okay.
Care center.
Yeah, the care center side. So we're going to be going over there and just doing a service with them. So.
All right. Well, you can open up the Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said, "I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats of this bread will live forever, and the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh." The Jews then disputed among themselves, saying, "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" So Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood have eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood abide in me, and I in them. Just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so whoever eats me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven, not like that which your ancestors ate, and they died. But the one who eats this bread will live forever." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So my name is Lindsey Phillips, like I was introduced. So I am the Recruitment and Retention Coordinator for the foster and adoption side of things for the Cedar Rapids service area, which maybe doesn't mean probably a lot to you guys, but basically our service area for the state is broken down into 5 areas, which means I cover 19 counties. I actually live in New Sharon. Someone was just asking if I live up in Cedar Rapids. Nope, live in that tiny little town next to Montezuma that either Pella or Monty, I can usually say, and people are like, "Oh, I know where that's at." So anyway, I say I have the absolute best job. And I also say that on the flip side that I wish my job didn't exist because of the brokenness in this world, then we know that foster care does exist and we need this position. So my job is mainly to go out and just share about foster care and adoption and what that looks like here in the state of Iowa. So I'm gonna say so James 1 verse 27 says, "Religion that God our Father accepts," okay, I gotta adjust this for a second. "That God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being polluted by this world." And I think that's kind of what my goal is and what I'm here for, to share across the 19 counties I cover. So I'm gonna go kind of broad picture first, and I'm gonna just share a little bit about what Four Oaks does and how they partner with HHS, as that might not be something you guys are all familiar with. So HHS, formerly known as DHS, is who does the investigations, the initial removals when there's been a form of abuse reported. They do the investigation, they determine if a child is able to remain safely in the home. If that child is unable to, then they are going to bring in 4 Oaks, who they contract with for all 99 counties in the state of Iowa. So 4 Oaks' job is to license, train, recruit foster parents and adoptive parents. So from there, 4 Oaks begins the matching process of starting to look for a home for that child. It is our goal, just like I would expect to be all of you guys, the thought process is when a child is losing their home, their identity, right, their place of where they belong, they're being taken away from their family, we don't want them to lose their community too. But unfortunately, right now we have about a 35% shortage in foster homes, which means we basically have to start broadening out. That doesn't mean, I always like to let people know, that doesn't mean children are sleeping in HHS offices or hotel rooms, like in some states that is what currently happens. We are able to find them homes, but what happens is you take a child who maybe is from Williamsburg, and if we don't have foster homes in Williamsburg, then we start broadening out our search. So that child inadvertently could get moved to maybe Cedar Rapids if we weren't able to find enough homes. So that's part of our job. In addition, we work with relative placements. So a big push now is to find relatives that are able to take in their family members, whether it's a cousin, a niece, a nephew, and they care for them. And so HHS will be looking for a family member, and then they refer that family member to 4 Oaks to go through the recruitment or the process to become a foster parent or a kinship parent to take care of those kiddos. So the priority of how things work, as opposed to maybe in the 90s, was, you know, back in the 90s, let's say a child would be removed and they would initially go to a foster home. Now, the goal is if we're able to keep that child in the home, we know scientifically and all the research shows it's very traumatizing to have a child leave their home. So we want to keep that child home if we possibly can with a safety plan. Like I said, if we can't do that, then we go and look for an extended family member. The next layer is fictive kin. And fictive kin is someone who is not related to that child, but it might be a teacher, it might be someone in the congregation, things like that, that they have a way to positively impact that child's life, but they're not related. That is layer number 3. So when we exhaust those first 3 options, we're unable to find someone, then we begin looking at a foster home. So I just got these numbers this morning. I was very shocked because typically I stand up here and say last year in the state of Iowa there was 4,000 kiddos who were in need of temporary home. Actually, it was 6,415, I believe is what the numbers showed for 2023. So we're seeing a rise. The numbers are going up, and again, like I said, the foster homes are going down, so we have to figure out that balance right now. So again, those can be relative placement, or they can be children that are going into a foster home. The biggest thing that we see are teens needing home. Sibling groups is a huge one. What we see now is more and more families having maybe 4 or 5 kiddos, and they're being removed, and then we're trying to find a home. So, for instance, I'm going to share more of my story here in a minute, but we already have 3 biological children originally in our home. So if I got a phone call for a sibling group of 5, I wish I lived in a huge mansion, but I don't. So I'm I might be only able to take 2 of those children, or 3 of those children, and then they're having to split children up, which is just absolutely heartbreaking that siblings are having to be split up. But again, yeah, just spacing wise, we understand too, not everybody has empty rooms for children. So real quickly, I won't go into all the details, but there's about a 6 to 9 month process for individuals to become a foster parent. So they have to go through some training, which again was something that wasn't done maybe many years ago. The way the training works is it's very trauma informed, really teaching the whys behind some of the behaviors that maybe are presenting themselves. And when you begin to understand those whys over that course of 11 weeks, it begins to equip you better for the way that you're going to parent that child. So I always say the way that I parent my biological children is not the way that I'm able to parent children that are placed in my home. And then also during that time, we're doing home studies, checking the home, we're doing background checks. There's a lot of pieces going in to make sure that we're really placing kiddos in safe homes that are able to care for those children. So I think what I'll transition into more is, I'll tell you my why. I've given you a lot of just kind of background information about Four Oaks a little bit and about the why behind the system, but personally my why. So a few years ago, we had our son. He was a newborn, and he, I think we all wander through life, right? And we all are asking God, what's our purpose? What are we here to do? We're all called to serve in some way, but what is our way? And for many years, I had asked God that same question, like, God, what am I here to do? And I think growing up, my mom had experienced a lot of adversity and a lot of pieces of poverty. And I think I thought in my head that had there been someone through the foster care system to really support her and her siblings, would that have changed her trajectory a little bit, right? Would that have changed and rewritten her story a little bit? Not that my mom didn't come through and have a very successful life, and she birthed some amazing kiddos like myself, but it was, I just think of some of the mental health components that she experienced and how that could have changed had there been just one person that would have poured into her family. And so fast forward, like I said, I felt like this call of fostering was on our heart. And so I went to my husband with a 1-month-old, and I said, hey, I think we're supposed to be foster parents. And he looked at me like we were crazy, and he said, absolutely, I do not think that's what God's telling us right now. I'm like, no, I think it is. And so some time went by, and I went back to him and I said, no, I think we're supposed to do this, which is typically kind of how it works. And everybody that's become a foster parent, usually one spouse is on board, the other spouse is like, no. And eventually they seem to both come around. So we did, we went through the process, we became a foster parent, and I wasn't sure what was going to come next. We live in a small town. I didn't know if we would even get phone calls, which I hoped we didn't. I hoped there wasn't a need, and we wouldn't. Well, one day I got a phone call, and my little girls were with me. We had, like I said, 3 biological children at that point. And the phone call or the text message I received, which is pretty typical with how this works, is, hey, we're looking for a home for an 18-month-old medically fragile child. She has a feeding tube and frequent trips to the University of Iowa. Would you be interested in hearing more? Now, most people would have taken off running. I have no medical experience. My professional experience was working in the nonprofit sectors. I was working in a church at the time. And I just felt like God was telling me, yes, you want to hear more. And so I said to the girls, I think we're supposed to pray about this right now. And so we did. And I said, okay, I want to hear more. And so I heard more, and I said yes. And so once you say yes, that means a match has happened, and they're going to work on transitioning that child to your home. Now, Soph's story was a little different because she was in a prior foster home. So as opposed to a emergency removal where the kids are coming with the clothes they have on and they have really nothing, there was time to prepare a little bit. And so Soph came to us. She was, like I said, 18 months old. She didn't crawl, she didn't really move. She just kind of sat lifeless on the floor and was on a feeding schedule of every 3 hours. So I all of a sudden went back to having what it felt like a newborn, of just starting over again. And I just began, I open-handed to God. I said, God, I don't know what I'm doing right now, but you do, so you're going to have to equip me in this. And we prayed over her, and we had others pray for her. I always say, it takes a village to do what we're doing, and so many other foster parents, because we couldn't do it without the support of everyone around us. And so sometimes that is just the prayers. And the one thing that I felt like God was saying was, we're going to treat her just like we did the other children, and we're going to push her the same way. And so we did. And fast forward to now, she is 5 years old, and she is walking. She's off the feeding tube. She still has many global development delays, which means there's a lot of different things that she's faced with, but she keeps overcoming so much adversity. And like many stories, the goal is to get the kids back home, reunification. As you guys kind of caught with Sophie's story, her goal was unfortunately not able to go back home with her family. But I think there's something, just like we're adopted into Christ, I think that God wrote adoption for a unique reason just like this, and we were able to be Sophie's forever. And her next chapter has been very beautiful, and I continue to just see her flourish. And I always say she's the local celebrity around New Sharon because everybody knows Sophie and just everything she has to offer, and she's just the miracle that people just can't believe how far she's come. In addition, we've, like I said, had other children in our home. And so when Jan had reached out to me and said, what could be helpful in these packages that you guys put together? I go before many churches, many organizations, and I always say, I know standing in here, you guys might not all be called to foster, and I understand that, because that'd be the worst case scenario to have 50 people come up and be like, we'll be foster parents, because I can tell you the first placement you're gonna get, you'd be like, yeah, we're not called to foster. It really is a calling on your heart. But I do believe that everybody can do something, right? So I say that everywhere I go. You might not be called to foster, but you're called to do something. And so when Jan reached out and said, hey, what would be helpful? I said, the front side of things, like I just mentioned earlier, is these kiddos come into the home and they have nothing. They may have just spent weeks in survival mode of finding their own food, their own source of water, and wherever they may have found that. They have not been taken care of properly. And when they come into our homes, they have no toothbrush, no toothpaste, no shampoo, no brushes. I mean, you name it, they come with basically the clothes they have on. And it's typically not even the best clothes that they have on. They may have wore those for a week at a time. And so being able to have these items is just so helpful for a foster family that welcomes a kiddo at 10 o'clock at night. Or I'll tell you, it's typically at 5 or 6 p.m. If you're gonna get a call, it never fails. It's like 5 or 6 p.m. We seem to get HHS giving us about 9 matches that need to be done in an hour that you're like, we gotta get these kiddos home. And so at that point, I always say, not only did you just turn your home upside down by welcoming a new child in it, but you also don't have a toothbrush, you don't have the toothpaste, you don't have diapers, you don't have whatever it might be that that child needs. So to have these items, or to have somewhere you can call to say, can you bring us these items, is so, so helpful. And then on the flip side, I always say with the duffel bags or the plastic totes, our goal is for unification, right? So we want to get those children back home. We want to see the parents overcome the obstacles that they've been faced with and successfully beat that and get those kiddos back home. It's my heart. I've been a part of reunification stories, and it's absolutely beautiful. In one of my cases, mom and dad have been sober for over 5 years now. And they are followers of Christ that they were not at the beginning, and they successfully were able to get their 6 kiddos home, and they're doing just amazing. And they continue to serve every day for God, and that's what they say is we're here to serve now because of what's happened to us. We don't want anyone else to experience that. And so to see those things happen on the flip side, you think, okay, when I send that child home, how do I send them home in the best case? Well, I always say they might not be going on the next Disney vacation, but a tote bag or a plastic container, that's something tangible that parents can continue to reuse for years to come. That's something they can put clothes in as the child grows, or whatever way it is going to be for storing their belongings. So those are just beautiful ways that your congregation has stepped up to support foster families. And there's lots of other ways. I can't tell you the amount of churches so every time I walk into a church door, I always just say, okay, God, you're driving this. I don't know where it's going to go today. And it never fails. Something comes out of it that I never expected. So once I was at a church and I was getting ready to leave, and I was like, okay, God, I don't know what today was going to be. And someone walked up to me and they said, I actually I'm a radio disc jockey. And they said, you know, I'd love to do a story like this on my air. And I said, absolutely, like I would love that. Well, that was a partnership. Was he called a foster? No, but he was able to see a need to share. And again, as individuals, the more we can continue to share that 6,000 number that I just gave you to anybody you interact with, or we invite myself or others in to just share about that need, we can end this crisis that we're in right now with needing foster homes. Because I don't know how many churches are out there here in the state of Iowa, but I know there's quite a few. And if we all stepped up, I think we could end this pretty quickly. And so as a body of believers, I truly do believe we're on the horizon to be able to fix just this problem that we're being faced with right now. So I've given you guys a lot of information. I gave you just a small tidbit of my world. I certainly don't want to take much more of your time, but I'm happy to stay afterwards and answer any other questions you may have or any other ways that you can partner with us. And again, I just thank you so much for the gift that you are giving to children here in care that need this. So anyway, yeah, thank you guys.